Depression Baby. Stories about growing up in Appalachia and other things too. With my dad, Ray B. Rogers.
On August 16th, 1929, I came into this world kicking and screaming. I reckon that made me a depression baby.
Depression Baby is produced by World Songs Media, bringing you the book titles Depression Baby and now Up from Hanging Dog at raybrogers.com.
The Circle of Rice. There it was, an almost perfect circle of rice stuck fast to the ceiling in the kitchen. It was to stay there several days. There were too many other important tasks to do to worry about the rice and its adhesive qualities. If this happened today, someone would take a photograph of this phenomenon with a cell phone. But I only have the picture in my mind. We didn't take many photos during the Great Depression. In 1937, our family did not even own a camera. There was a hole in the wall between the kitchen and the dining room, and a jagged piece of metal was stuck in the wall across the dining room. My older brother Dean had been setting the table for Mother when the piece of metal flew right past his head without harming him and stuck into the wall. Another miracle occurred. Mother had been standing in front of the wood stove just before the explosion, maybe checking on the pot of rice that she was cooking. The oven door blew off and propelled her across the room to land in the kitchen sink. She wasn't badly injured. 5 children still had a mother to love and care for them. My dad still had a wife who would later give him another daughter, my baby sister Dale. A greater power had decided not to close the book on Willie Boone. Mother's unlikely name was the result of being named after 2 uncles, Will Medford and Boone Medford. Almost as bad as a boy being named Sue, i.e. the song by Johnny Cash. Back in the dirty 30s, there was a wood stove in the kitchen of most mountain homes. There was plenty of wood available, and electricity was too expensive to cook with, and natural gas had not found its way into Cullowhee, North Carolina. But Western Carolina Teachers College had been established in this little village for many years, and this is what brought Frank and Willie Boone to Cullowhee. When Dad started teaching as a very young man, a college degree was not required. As the educational requirements were increased for teachers, Dad would take extension courses at Duke University's summer school at Lake Junaluska, North Carolina. Finally, the state of North Carolina decided to require all teachers to have a degree, or they had to quit teaching. This created quite a dilemma for Dad. He had a wife and 5 children to support, no money, and the need to attend college for a year. He had a great love for his profession and did not want to give it up. In fact, later in life he became the president of the North Carolina Educational Association. Today I find it hard to imagine that many people would have the courage and determination to move forward, as my parents did, in the face of this challenge. Dad was determined to get his degree, and he did. They rented a large 2-story yellow frame house located conveniently to the college. They found pasture for the family milk cow just up the gravel road a piece. They found space for a vegetable garden, which was a necessity for us to survive. And let us not forget the flock of chickens that provided us with fresh organic yard eggs and an occasional Sunday dinner of fried chicken. With this in place, what would they do for income? We can forget student loans. They had not been invented at this time. Food stamps had not been benevolently showered upon us by our government, and any form of welfare was out of the question. Generally, mountain people were too proud to accept the above. They would starve first. However, it was not beneath them to take in boarders. The boarders were college students who were preparing to be teachers. What could have been a dismal experience became a fun thing. Sharing a big house with a bunch of fun-loving college students became a good family experience while providing enough income for us to exist for a year. One of our dining room chairs had a dark spot in the wood on the back of the chair. My little brother Mark Twain, whose name, I suppose, comes from Dad's appreciation of this writer, had claimed this particular chair as his own. Mark and his twin sister Jane were about 5 years old. The college kids made a game of swiping Mark's chair. Mark would make each boarder get up until he found his beloved chair with the dark spot on it, and he would again claim it for his own. Preparing food for about 15 people at each meal was extremely hard for Mom, who was a petite lady, but she had tremendous energy and the will to get things done. We all pitched in to help, but I marvel at how she made it all come together. One of our neighbors was the dean of the college, Dean Bird. I believe that there is a building at the university named for him. He built a treehouse for his son Charlie that even had electric lights and a cot in it. Charlie was just a little older than myself, a mature third grader, and we played together. We played Flash Gordon, a comic strip character, with wooden swords and capes. We even built our own treehouse in the jungle near our houses. Our other neighbor was named Odell, and Odell was the first black man that I had ever met. Odell had 2 daughters a little older than myself. Odell was talented at fixing things, and since my dad wasn't too good at fixing things, he sometimes called on Odell for help. Our wood stove had a water back, a device for heating water in a tank on one end of the stove. Odell came by to work on the stove and thought that he had fixed it, but somehow a valve didn't open up to let out the steam, and the next morning when the stove was fired up, the steam couldn't escape and the stove blew up. We all know the power of steam, which moved trains and ships for years until diesel fuel took over. Odell was so sorry and apologetic, although it may not have been his fault. We just don't know exactly what happened. Odell was a kind and gentle man who did not forget the explosion and the circle of rice on the ceiling. Many years later, my sister Jane and her husband Aaron moved to Cullowhee. Jane became a department head, and Aaron became a dean of what is now Western Carolina University. They bought a newly built house on a hill near the university. Being from the mountains, they both loved rhododendrons and the needed plants for landscaping. Somehow Odell found out about Jane being back in Cullowhee, and one day he just showed up at her house with a truckload of rhododendron plants. Odell was quite old by then, but he had not forgotten. Even though he had done his best to fix the stove, and what happened may not have been his fault, our family never had negative feelings about Odell. He wanted to make things right. Jane and Aaron's house on the hill, which they sold years ago, is adorned each June with the purple flowers of the rhododendrons that Odell brought to make things right. Odell, things are right, and the circle of rice on the ceiling is now only a fading memory.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Depression Baby. And if you did, my dad has one important request. If this podcast brought a little smile to your day, would you please consider right now subscribing for free to the podcast and kindly leaving a nice 5-star rating and review on iTunes. You can make the difference in getting Depression Baby in front of a wider audience and help preserve this disappearing legacy. If you need any help with how to subscribe to the podcast, just go to RayBRogers.com and look for the podcast tab on the main menu. Thanks to our audio and musical contributors, including our friend Lobo Loco. You can find out more about him and all the rest of the music and audio in the show notes at, you guessed it, RayBRogers.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Depression Baby Podcast.